Yeah, watch now. That's me. I'm live. I think there's some kind of delay. And all right, 8 followers. So that's pretty exciting. Uh, this thing is telling me I should be streaming. This says offline, but here you say I'm online. And this says I'm online. So let's just double check this. Hey, there we go. Click to unmute 720p. That is fantastic. Okay, cool. So now it looks like I'm live. I'm going to go ahead and share my whole screen. Hope I don't ever accidentally, embarrass myself, slide myself into the corner. So we have OpenTHC. OpenTHC, open source standards, blah, 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 because we want to have standards. That's all our API stuff. But we have this Docker business, and it's available on GitHub and on Docker, and you should be able to just clone it and say Docker up. It's fairly simple, Docker profile. And a bunch of the stuff is driven from a .me domain. We run this DNS records for a .me, and we do that so that it's possible for everybody else to be able to, dig OpenTHC.me. .me is a website that we actually operate, but if you do like sso.openthc.me, it routes to a 127. So this is where you would be able to just clone the image, say Docker Compose up on your local machine, and you'd be able to rock and roll. And that should work on Windows or Mac or Linux or anywhere where you can get like Docker images, from here to run. These haven't been updated in a while, but we are going to endeavor to fix that. Some of these old apps don't. We're doing some upgrades on our whole process from our foundational install is on Debian 11 or Debian 12, and then Debian 13 is out now, and we should start migrating. So that's part of what we are looking at, part of what we are working on here. But one of our problems when these container images start up, if we just take a look, we've got this front-end proxy machine. It runs Caddy, and that routes traffic to all of these other backends so that they're all just listening on one endpoint. There's just one exposed port. And then this Caddy server reverse proxies to these other services that are in here, SSO, CRE, a couple of other ones, the app, the point of sale, proxies to all of those. So actually each of these services also are running a Caddy for their own web server bits and then PHP FPM. And it's a little messy because they run in, we basically have two processes running in the same container. And I'll dig into that. You could see it in the init scripts inside of any of those containers. But one of the big problems that we have is we deploy this container universe, and it's moderately complicated to set up things for a company-wide like OpenTHC environment, because you got to put your company data in there and some attributes on the company and make sure that your company's user level database is configured for your profile. You've got to get a configuration for the compliance engine, right? So like if you're connecting to a Metric or BioTrack or using a less common one, CCRS in Washington, the self-reporting business going on in places like Arizona and Vermont, Health Canada also, for example, and various other regulatory agencies that exist. Some do real-time reporting through a system like Metric, who's the most common one, METRC, not Metric like the measuring system. And then, some got these one-off systems. Anyways, you got to configure your company. one or more contacts to sign in as like the administrative level root user for your company. And your company is issued by these regulatory agencies one or more licenses. So those also need to be configured for your company. I'm company ABC, and I have a growing license, and I have a processing license, and I have a delivery license, transportation license, and I have a waste disposal license. And in the system, I'm tracking various inventories at these various underneath these various licenses. Even if they're all in the same physical location, these licenses own the materials in the system. So you keep this stuff in this room is for this specific license, and other details for organizing your inventory, and go and read up on like things like GMP and other stuff for how to manage that. I don't want to get too far into and not tell you how to manage your inventory, but here's what to do in your reporting. So that's a bunch of complicated stuff that we've got to set up. And one of the things we had been struggling with through these various projects, let's see if we can look and see what SSO tells us. Right, SSO starts itself, maybe has a debug mode enabled, and then it has to run this PHP script of its own thing. And this PHP script is like looking for some configs, waiting for the database server to get fully running, because the database server has to do its own init on the first time that it runs, tries to write a config file. This is a little extra work here. And then tries to make sure that the company and contact and some other details are available, from the environment that it's reading. So this means when you're running our own Docker container environment, one of the requirements is to go through and set like a huge set, not a huge set, but a pretty big set of environment variables. And that's sort of a big problem. And I'm finally getting to the point from this stream. We've just learned about this, so we will be making some modifications along these ways. This is from Element HQ. Element and Matrix are some other open source projects. But in this compose file, it's got some cool tricks that I never knew about. Well, I knew about secrets. But look at this service. It's some sort of initialization piece. It says generate Synapse secrets, and there's another one down here for generating mass secrets. And they start as the same user, but they have this neat feature. It says restart no. Okay, so if it exits, it won't ever try again. And it loads up some volumes, links in this entry point script, sets some environment variables, and then says, hey, this is our entry point script. That it's just mounted in right here. And so that's kind of easy. So we could actually go and look at this script. It's init generate synapse secrets, sh. You see it gets copied into this point. So what does it do? If it has the file, it leaves. Otherwise, it says you don't have it. And it runs some Python script to generate something. We don't really care what it is. You see this way that it functions, it'll only run one time. Using and checking for this particular file. You can see that was in the script. So that's fun. That's what Synapse secrets and mass secrets, take my word for it. It sort of does the same thing, but it's got this other trick, actually. They've overridden the command. It's not an entry point now. They're saying command here, and it's got some Bixby notes and stuff. So this is probably not a perfect solution. It's close enough, gives us a good starting point, but it generates a config very much like what Synapse secrets does, but more directly, I guess, because it's just saying that. Maybe there's another entry point already defined for mass secrets that matters. So that's cool. And it also says restart no. Finally, we're getting there. And then they have this third service called init, build, init, user, same as the other ones. It also says restart no, mounts up some volumes that sort of look like the same-ish, maybe, copies in an init script. So it's running a command, not an entry point. And it's saying init sh. It's this one right here. Let's take a quick look at it. What does it do? Looks for some key, looks for this thing, looks for this file, looks for all these other files, exports some config, evil hap to escape dollars, does the whole thing here, runs this template command, or runs this template function for ding, 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 invis subs, builds up a bunch of config files. Good job, us, right? That's fantastic. So there's giving us some other pro tips on how to get secrets in there. Thanks for that, y'all. And then it runs its thing. It has its environment file that, they show you how to do an example one. And then it gets super, super fun. This one depends on the previous two services that we were looking at, and it depends on their conditions. Service completed successfully. So I never knew about this trick. And I'd asked AI and some robots about how to do things like this. I've even talked to folks I know who were experienced with Docker, and they were saying, "Oh, inside of this is how our containers came to have a script like this init PHP inside of this specific image, because this specific image is trying to start up the things that it wants. But the other images that are starting are also making very similar checks because they also have a same dependency, right?" So that's sort of a little bumpy for us, and we wanted the database to be able to, we have these two goals that we want. One is to be able to say Docker compose up from the, our plain. Where did I put our repo? From our base thing, we want to be able to say Docker compose up and have it just work. And then also make it very, very easy for someone to create a new company and have it also get configured and dialed into the system, and also end up just works, just works. And that was where we needed to run these one-off scripts. They just run the first time. They just make sure that your company and your licenses and your users that you require to be there are configured, and then we can actually still have them all work from the environment variable. I still think that, and again, I'll just go back and pick on SSO feature set. It's Docker, definitely still going to run init sh, because we like to do that. We want to set this PHP debug if somebody wants that to rock. This PHP script is also probably still going to exist. This is just some debug noise. We're cleaning up some environment variables. We don't want to export them too far. But in here, I'm going to have to do a lot less, like maybe spin wait for the database. Maybe not, since now I don't need to work in the database. And these services can all get built into, a specific service that gets added into this compose file, where we would add another one. Like we'll have hub, and then we just have another one that's in here that's called something clever, like config init or something really, really smart. And it waits for the PostgreSQL database to run. Maybe we should wait for Redis to be running, and then it builds out the database information that we need to run. Now it is possible, and it does this. Our universe does this. The SQL image out of the box comes with a bunch of stuff already defined, and there is this possibility that you can run its own initdb mechanisms when that container starts. That's part of the PG base image that we are building on top of here. And we take advantage of that for initializing the first couple of databases, loading up the base schema for all of those databases, and loading in some well-known identifiers in the universe. Those well-known identifiers being like an identifier in the system that represents a root type of thing, the system itself, or sometimes we want to link something to an orphan, not an orphan, it's just, we don't know what to link this to. There's a problem. So you can identify these records instead of having them be null in the database. They have these special identifiers. So we have those special identifiers for lab matrices, a whole bunch of stuff. That all gets loaded in, all the print formats that it supports, those all get loaded in there. But it's that second step where, like in our own demo universe, we Docker compose up and want to have a bunch of configuration in there for, like a dozen different companies, each with one or more licenses, each with one or more users, and including having users that are cross-referenced across multiple companies, so we can sign in as some kind of test user, and then it has access to multiple companies, so we can, run our own tests easier. So this feature set that we're planning and are just now talking through and, on the internet about, going to get that started here. Probably not on a live stream. I don't know. I feel embarrassed about working on a live stream. And what if my code is also messy? That's a joke. I know my code is messy. Ha ha ha. I have this other system with it and some commits in on this one for some other tests, because we're also, I think I mentioned, we got a two-part process here where we're looking to put these improvements into the container universe and also get the universe updated so that it's using Debian 13 as a base for all this stuff. And that also includes PHP 8.4, I think, or something like that. So I wonder if I can invite myself on this other machine, and we would look at its screen while we do stuff. Yeah, I don't know if I know how to do that too well. Yep, all right, few second delay there. 61 subscribers, one watching right now, started streaming, #element. Oh, I should have put #Docker in the note. Okay, well, maybe I'll get some streaming excitement there. So let's say new. So we do that. I'm going to stop that sharing off of this one. We are seeing if this other silly thing knows how to join. It is slugging along. I said add guest. Trying to share my screen from this other endpoint. Does not seem to be loading. It's a little frustrating. What in the flip is happening? Failed to load. Server responded. Status 401. WebSocket failed. WebSocket failed. Invalid digest and integrity attribute. Oh shit! That's why my fonts can't load font. Awesome. That's funny. And some push alert. Some of that stuff is being blocked by my ad blocker. But this integrity one seems to be a big problem because then it leads me to 2 or 3 other requests that give me 401 unauthorized and 403 forbidden, 422 unprocessable content. That's unfortunate. So I can't, I don't know. Maybe my latest version of Chrome is out of date or some fucking nonsense. So that is kind of a drag. I wasn't too keen to have to try to commit everything. I wonder if there's a different way I could I can't fix that other thing, and I can't put a stream over there. I could shit, do I still have Tiger VNC on this thing? I don't. No, none of that's going to fly. So that's kind of a downer. And if I wanted to show off this stuff, I got all these other projects that are, on their own branch with their own feature set here that are doing their stuff. And that's just frustrating because I wanted to be able to show this to everyone. Okay, hold on. Oh, yeah, all right. I see what I've done there. Aggravating, friends. So I got some little changes going in here already. Oh yeah, because this is where we purged out all of those old config files. And we gave ourselves some new notes. It says to run this thing. Standard on. Oh yeah, that's the notes about that. And actually that cleans up the notes about that, I think. And then the following services. We have that. Where does it say? Docker Compose up, visit sso.me, sign in, see install. And then way down here on this one, saying on install. Installed is the thing. Yeah, we have that. That's going to be some old node. And then down here we say compose.d. And then we have another thing, and those nodes are wrong, so they were removed. I don't want that in there. And we want to have that one is commented out, and we do want to show. No, we don't want those volumes. I'm gonna do one of these jobs for series volumes. And then who's this other one? AppDot. I'm going to turn off its debug. Don't want to remote mount stuff in there either. So that's a little bit better. And here, while we're digging around in here, see, here's one of those specialty IDs of some item in the universe that we want to pay attention to. This one is basically a default app, right? A well-known ID in our whole universe. We have well-known IDs for a whole bunch of the stuff in the universe. Right, picks that one. And then, is that where it goes? Because I want to persist the SSL termination and shit. Yeah, switch over to ours, save the data. Oh, I see what we're doing. Changing the style on those. OPA, we got to get dialed in. Oh yeah, so these are those config options we're probably going to get to be able to clean up. And that looks tidy. And that looks okay. See, the rest of you are doing that. Your dependencies moved down. You got that commented out. You got that commented out. You're exporting the environment. Environment, environment, no volume. Environment, environment, no volume. Environment, environment, no volume. Environment, environment, no volume. So let's put that up there. And then in our config here, we got SQL and this. And then I'm going to make an image called CFG. Container name is cfg.openthc.me. Image is openthc/web. And now let's go and steal some of these crazy ideas and see what it does. We want to do, okay, so the next thing we want to do is actually make SSO depends on config, depends on, no, I say config colon, and then it depends on having it with condition. Service completed successfully. That is interesting. And then for config, I need to say image something other. Restart. No, in quotes because of the Norway problem. I have an image. This user, maybe I do something with volumes. And then do I make an entry point or do I do a command something? I don't know which one of those to do. So that'll be our next experiment, is to figure out which one of those to do. And then this thing needs to know the environment details. Put that in there. And I think you probably are already going to know the network. Wonder where this thing sets volume path. Volume path equals dot. I love it. Okay. So we could do the same thing as they're doing here, and in this thing say volumes volume path slash sure. This is our delta right here. We added this config and this other stuff. Oh man, I'm not sharing my screen. Idiot. Thought everybody was looking at these diffs. Thought everybody was looking at these diffs right here, you know, the whole time. Oops, my bad. But this is what I've added, is this new config image, and we're going to have to figure out how to make it run. Under web, what does web do at the end? Web runs a command that is called init.sh. And init.sh pretends to be a signal handle, starts PHP FPM, and runs caddy. That's my command sh, because you copy from OpenTHC sys. And what is the entry point on sys? There is no. Oh, this is it. Sys Debian 11 slim. Copy Docker update run Docker. Okay, so it doesn't really actually do very much, and that's unfortunate for us. So sys doesn't do that. Web doesn't run an entry point. It runs command. Let's find out what it is. Because actually, while this is running, look at this weird thing they do. One of these guys depends on condition. This volumes. Yeah, so see, so this one does an init sh, and then it exits. This one changes the entry point to a different entry point, which does something in this. So why is it one versus the other? I don't know yet. And then look at this entry point for certbot. This is madness. The entry point is let's make a huge shell script. So we can even do something similar to that if we were so inclined. It's just, it seems crazy to me. You can see here their database server depends on init, but I'm going to need my database server running, and Redis probably running for good measure. And set there depends on to run on the thing, and then we've got generic workers that run, and generic worker, and mailhog, which I think is like post hog. Wonder which one's cooler. Element. I mean, this one is a fairly complicated container. Sweet. And this one is also running like a direct command under whatever this image is. We'd have to like do some more digging. JWT handler. Evil hack to pull in bash so we can run an entry point. Docker file inline. Holy doly. Well, this is a really cool example of what you can do with compose.yaml. So I'm excited about that. Networks backend. Do default. Depends on init, exit. Depends on condition service started. I wonder if service started is like the default. Depends on config condition. Oh, service started, service healthy, service completed successfully. Thank you, magic tools that are built into VS Code. Okay, so cool. That's it. All right, so here we go. Commands, a default command arguments, easily overridden at Docker run. Command hello. Run my image, echo hello. Docker run my image, echo goodbye, echo goodbye. Entry point defines the main command. Harder to override. You don't want to. And run echo. Command hello. Docker run my image, echo hello. Docker run my image, goodbye, automatically is running down to override the thing. You would say entry point. Prefer exec. So I want to run my entry point. No, that. Avoid the shell form. Why? Exec form handles SIG, plays nicer with Docker. How they contain. Both are present. Docker runs Python at py. So if my entry point is like bin bash, or maybe I would just set my entry point to be my own shell script and then hope for the best. If you override command, if both are present, Docker runs Python app. If you override command, Docker run Python other py. Cool. And you can actually do both of them in the same fucking thing. Use entry point, you are a specific tool, and you always want the same. Use command when you want defaults. Override. Examples, flags, scripts, something. So that's pretty exciting. Thanks for that, GPT. You are wonderful. So I'll just leave that. Probably from web, I'll override my entry point since I guess the entry point, I'm using whatever entry point exists for Debian 11 or Debian 13, which I'm going to guess is bin sh. Let's actually go and see Debian official Docker images. You pick a tag. Latest, 7 days ago, Linux AMD 64 has some interesting numbers. plus 5 more. Wonder what they are. ARM 7, PPC. Ah, okay, interesting. That's cool for me. AMD 64 is what I use, though. Layers. Debian SH. Yee. So I was sort of hoping to see something in there like, a shell script or something. Low severity, medium severity. Image layers, no base image identified. That's awesome. Analyzed by Docker Scout. That's cool. Here's the Debian SH. Said you will pipe fail. Oh, this is all the neat stuff right there. Finally. Okay, you do this debureau type in it. Just read link dash source, constants, bunch of flags and a bunch of stuff. D get opt. While true, read a bunch of flags. Some targeter, do the thing. Change ownership, change mod, do this thing, do this thing. Looks like you have to probably run this as root. Yeah, all right, I see what you do. You run that, and then you do all this. I get it. That is very cool. Okay, thanks. Good job on this. Good job on this. Oopsie. Whoops. All right. Anyways, so that's that for us adding that to the config. Now we have to do some more on the other side of this with regards to our Debian 11 bits of the universe. I believe it's going to be. kind of want to show off this mess we have. In this one project that we have, we depend on these ISO codes. So like we were talking about, one of the reasons we're even trying to fix this init stuff is to reduce the amount of burden when the system is starting and to make it easy to configure. And one of the things is we got to load up this SQL file that's just like kind of every single ISO code, even though we only use maybe 24 of them. We had this like setup. So this is something that we can do, move that into the next mechanism that we have for, initializing the configuration of the system. We won't have to do all of this. We can like change how that works and then make it so our objective here is that if you're in the Docker universe right here, is that you'd be able to either through editing not through editing a .env file, I'm sorry. No, you would edit something like company.yaml. .yaml, which doesn't exist, and you would write in here like, here's my company, and you'd say something like, my ID's company, some ULID, you'd put in some ULID right there, name, company, mega rad, and then you'd have like your license. Put some ULID in there, and it's gonna have a name, manufacturing, and it's going to have a code, and this is where you put in your 411-R or whatever kind of mechanism you get from your state agency. And maybe you have another one, that's because they let you do vertical, you have retail. That's one more code, right? I don't know why I had this R, because it's supposed to be -M. If you mess this up, you'd have to recreate it. And then you'd have to have your contact that you're going to add into the universe. Or maybe I'll make you put those at the top. Nope. And then you do this. And then you say ID, some ULID. And then you have their name, David. And then you have their email. And then you're done, right? So this would actually have to say company. And then we do something like this. And then you have these licenses still. And we're ready to rock. Maybe we do something down here to let you make a new section. We will work that out, but that'll be the mechanism that then when you get into this compose YAML, you'll basically just be able to mount your volume into this container through hopefully like just, compose override. You just go into here and you say, oh, okay, cool. I need to do a config, volumes, and then you do something like mycompany.yaml, and you mount it in, and you're ready to rock and roll. So we're hoping to be able to get some feature sets like that going in here in just a little bit. And then we'd be able to do away with all of this like env file, because this env file has stuff that does matter to our universe. Let's just go and pick one, demo env. We need to know these DSNs to be able to connect to these other databases. And these systems and service IDs, we also need to know what these values are. These are important to, have in the system. But where we were getting way down to this is now we were also going to have to try to do what is this company ID and all of this. And this was going to end up being another 40 config options or something, which is, some of it's for setting up the OpenTHC universe, the environment with all of these things. So these secret keys and the ID of these services, that makes sense to be part of this environment file. And you could launch yours and they could be the same. You would want to change your keys, and these keys are here for demo, and they're left in there on purpose for when you're running the .me, and it'll all work under the .me universe with these assumptions in here. But the production universe, you want to have different values. If you're going to be changing it for your own universe, you'd want to update these. And I think we're going to make a mechanism to put that in there, change these database file names and these other things. And you'd have to go in and manually update your PostgreSQL database server to change that information. And that's part of like updating that container. So you'd have to do some kind of nonsense where you get into your compose YAML for the SQL container, and you make it do something before it does the normal PostgreSQL init. And you could do one of those entry point kind of things, entry point, and then I forgot how it did it in that other bit here. What did they do? Some not crazy shit. Remember crazy shit. Command was that. Volumes, entry point is entry point sh that you're mounting in. But I'm telling you, one of you guys was madness. Yeah, you did some crazy entry point like that, and then that one was this crazy entry point. I'm telling you, I thought one of them was entry line was this crazy shit. So what if we tried to do something silly like that? Oh my gosh, I'm already mad about it. Bin sh. And what we would do in here is, well, we wouldn't do any of that. Trap exit term. We don't need that. And then in here, we would do something like PSQL to change the username and password. Or I think you get to like P update role or something like this. You could do some things like that. And then at the end, you then call exec to the normal Docker entry point.sh that's part of the actual PostgreSQL image. And then it's going to do some weird crap that we want to do, like changing a username or changing a password. And then it does this. And, I don't know, you could volume mount in some file or something that's the script to run in PSQL before the other or after the normal DB init scripts have been run. So that's pretty exciting. Thanks for coming while we're talking through what we're doing with this Docker so you can like launch it and run these kinds of images yourself. We'll keep you updated. Thanks.